of the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office. Today we remember the lives of the emergency responders and the victims of the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City, in Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And today the story is out, as you've probably read, that almost more are dying from the aftermath of the 9/11 attack that were actually killed on the day of. So it continues to take the lives of Americans every day. So today we honor the military who responded to defend our nation. And we remember the survivors whose lives were forever changed. First, I'm pleased to introduce Sheriff Mike Fitzhugh, who will make a few comments. Our newly elected Sheriff Mike Fitzhugh.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I would like to, thank you. Appreciate it. I'd like to welcome everybody to, as John said, the 17th annual ceremony for 9/11. And I would especially like to welcome our veterans that are with us today who have served in our armed forces and services, prior and retired first responders for being here, and thank you all for your service. First off, I would like to welcome Mayor Bill Ketron. Bill, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Commissioners Pettis Reed, Joe Gurley, Shanto Sereno, Jeff Phillips, Steve Irvin, Craig Harris, and Michael Rather. And would like to thank all of you for being here with us today. As John mentioned, nearly 3,000 people died on 9/11/2001. Since that time, there's been nearly 10,000 first responders and others that's been diagnosed with cancer because of this event. Since that time, there's been a little over 2,000 deaths as a responsible since 9/11 that's directly related to the 9/11 event. As John mentioned, in 2018, they expect that we will surpass the number of people that were killed at 9/11 with survivors from that event who will die from cancer or other related illnesses. So this is an event that has happened to our country but will keep on for years to come. Let's also remember the first responders and the military who have given so much to this country since that time and have given their lives in the support of their service. Thank you all again for being here. We appreciate you, and we hope that you enjoy this ceremony. Thank you.
Now I'd ask everyone to stand, please, as Pastor Noel Schoonmaker of the First Baptist Church of Murfreesboro gives us our invocation. Pastor Schoonmaker.
Let us pray. O Lord, our help is in your name, in you who made heaven and earth. Many of us remember right where we were when we first heard the news 17 years ago. Many of us stared at screens where we saw smoke rising. Many of us felt fear, anger, and deep sadness. We lament the violence and loss of life that occurred, and we ask that you would bring solace and strength to those who lost loved ones that day. We also remember the courageous first responders who rushed into the smoke to help others. We are thankful for each one, Lord, and thankful for all the first responders around this nation that do difficult and dangerous work on a daily basis to help people in crisis. I ask that you would bless them and keep them as they serve, that you would help all those in our armed forces who work diligently to defend us, and that you would help us all as residents of this great land to work toward unity in the way of love, and to continue striving toward liberty and justice for all. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Schoonmaker. We also want to recognize Representative Mike Sparks, who's here. Mike, good to see you this morning. Now remain standing as we have the national anthem that will be performed by Shelby Jones.
Detail, present, on. Oh. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Where are you a student?
High school student.
Where?
School.
Oh, okay.
Order, on.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Rolling Thunder will post the POW flag. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and will be led in that by retired Marine Anthony Tony Knox.
Detail, present, on.
Morning, please place the colors. Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, arms.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Order, on. Hooray, ready.
Now, our keynote speaker for today will be next on our program, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Chaplain Clark Harrell. Colonel Harrell has earned the Army Commander's Award for Public Service, the Air Force Meritorious Service Medal, and the Air Force Commendation Medal. He received the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal for Operation Enduring Freedom and the Armed Forces Reserve Medal for Operation Noble Eagle. Colonel Harrell is a graduate of MTSU. He earned his Master of Divinity degree and his Doctorate of Ministry program degree. He is an educator by profession, earning his master's degree and his specialist in education degree at MTSU. He completed his doctorate degree in education from Trevecca Nazarene University in Nashville. You may know him otherwise as the principal of Stewart's Creek High School. Colonel Harrell.
The phrase 9/11 for all time will have a special meaning and evoke a very special memory of a moment in history where the world as we knew it changed forevermore. It is fitting that every year on September the 11th, Americans join to honor the more than 3,000 people who died that day in Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and of course, New York City. May our purpose be to remember and to celebrate that the United States is resilient. If you strive to tear something down, we'll build it back in a greater way, and not just with what's standing behind me as an example, but within our hearts and our resolve, because freedom counts, it matters, it's costly, and it will always thrive and breathe because, as General MacArthur said, and I believe it, Americans are fearless. We prayerfully acknowledge, because of the loss and sacrifice, that it is a painful day for a lot of people today. And as we gather, I don't want us to forget that. There are those that are grieving today of loss. There are those that are grieving that has been alluded to already because of effects they are having, and families are journeying through that. May today ever be a reminder that our days should be filled with things that matter, and that the price of freedom is high. To all first responders, to members of the United States military, thank you for your service to our country. We cannot say that enough. Every time I work, whether it's been on our own soil or soil that we have claimed and it becomes sanctified as United States soil when we're in other places in the world, I have been amazed and humbled by the dedication of men and women to this great nation that we live in. We have the honor of living in the greatest nation on earth. And it is possible because of brave men and women like you. In the early 19th century, Jan Masaryk, a Czechoslovakian statesman, journeyed to the United States of America. On the trip that he took, he made a speech, and in it he said these words: "Raised in liberty, most Americans accept their freedom as a matter of course. Sometimes it seems to me you free people don't realize what you've got. You can wake up in the morning free to do as you choose, to read what you wish, to worship where you please, or just listen to a lovely piece of music. We take so much for granted as Americans. It is a sobering thought that as a principal of a high school and someone that's just striving to be the best educator he can be, if I live up to my mom and dad, I'm doing pretty good. I'm trying to get there. A lot of us here, we remember. But a lot of students today, and even in the high school where I'm principal at, they were not born when 9/11 occurred. Now that's a sobering thought for some of us. But it instills in us how much more should we dedicate ourselves to never forgetting, having services like this throughout our land, and making sure that they know the history and what 9/11 was all about, because they are the future citizens of this great republic. It is literally almost a generation away. And that new generation should never forget. And I think it starts first in our homes. It has to be in our schools. And it has to be at special moments like this. We remember, as already has been alluded to by our pastor today in the prayer, we remember vividly, a lot of us, where we were, what occurred, what was happening in our country and in this county. We remember the events. We remember the events at night where we were gathered as families around the table, around the TVs, tight. We remember going to our communities of faith and worshiping and praying together for the victims to find hope. Many of us put on uniforms. I remember on that day I was at Thurman Francis Arts Academy. My wife was the first one to call me, Nicole. And the next thing that happened, we all click in to wherever our realm was. We want to make things safe. And as soon as we knew that our students were home, safe, then I already had the call, and I put on my uniform and I left for a base. And it began another journey for me as a first responder. A lot of us have our stories. Throughout history, there are certain images that become ingrained in our minds. And what a powerful one behind me. The flag raised at Iwo Jima. The day that President Kennedy was killed. The day that Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. When Neil Armstrong, I had a great memory. I was really young, but I can remember that black and white TV. Neil Armstrong stepping out on the moon. President Reagan telling the Soviets, tear down this wall. And 9/11. Images of planes flying into the World Trade Center. Smoke rising from the Pentagon. The courage and compassion of men and women racing into burning, falling buildings to save the innocent. Heroes who died in the field in Pennsylvania. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, freedom cannot be bestowed, it must be achieved. 9/11 showed us there are those out there who would be happy to take it away from us. Now, we can't shy away from saying that. It should give us the resolve to focus on things that count. Rightly so, we cheer for the athlete. Rightly so, we laud the entertainers. But I say we dedicate ourselves anew today. We ought to be spend more time honoring the real heroes, the unsung, everyday heroes, people in our community who make our lives safe because they put themselves on the front line to make sure that we can enjoy the leisure of our sports and entertainment. Let us be thankful and celebrate the real heroes. We're sitting on their ground. We're seeing their vehicles. We're seeing their dedication of honor to things that matter. These are the things that we need to celebrate. We can never give them enough praise. And I'll add another group. When it comes to the front lines, never let us forget that in any classroom where a teacher is teaching, that is the front line of a new citizen of this great republic being trained to take over and to lead the way into the next. We must remember for so many reasons. Now, I know today that it doesn't take a seminar on 9/11 and all the facts. It's not a lecture class up here. It's heartfelt. We dedicate ourselves to remembering, and we dedicate ourselves to never forgetting Americans who gave and risked their lives on that fateful day. Ugly, harsh realities explode over us and around us today at the ravished, unprovoked attacks on our Americans. It still provides for us a kaleidoscope of sight and sound, and for some that were there, the smell that reminds us that freedom is not free. Freedom is not free. Freedom, I want to close with the last part of what I have to say. It can't be talked about enough. If you've ever been out of this nation, you realize it. Freedom is the source of great music. Freedom is the source of flaming oratory. Freedom is the heart cry of mankind. Beyond ourselves, it's why that the United States of America cannot cease to being the beacon of light and hope for the world around us. And we can't let radicals and those that are involved in a sickness of their own try to tear down what it has taken blood and sweat and commitment and courage and fearlessness to build up. We are the generation building the next generation that must re-win, reclaim, rededicate ourselves to this great republic and what we stand for. Freedom is a great gift. We are blessed with it in wonderful abundance in this country that we live in. Freedom and liberty are the bedrock of this country. But we must always remember it comes with a cost. Freedom's preservation is the responsibility of those elected to serve us. It is the responsibility of those that make far-reaching decisions that affect all of us. But I want to say more importantly, it's our responsibility. The common man, the common woman, the ordinary yet special, because everyone's name matters in the United States of America. Go now, as I took the tour at 9/11 3 years ago, and see the names that are there because they matter in this country. The common man, for us, we must preserve these principles. We're the ones who must demand the restoration of morality and integrity as the bedrock of our society. We are the ones that must demand a responsive sensitivity to every citizen. And we are the ones that must demand leadership that is courageous enough to do the unpopular, to preserve our way of life, and to make sure human rights at every level are met. Let freedom ring as we stand for character instead of compromise. Let freedom ring as we stand for truth, and we ensure that the timeless values of duty, loyalty, sacrifice, that they will still flourish in this great land. So it is appropriate today that we thank God for our freedom and commit ourselves to preserving our liberty so that freedom will always ring from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, Colonel Harrell. Beautifully done. At Stewart's Creek High School, we understand he's developed a culture of excellence for strong academics, highest graduation rate, athletics, and fine arts, and no surprise. Let's give him another round of applause, if you would. Glad to have members of his family here today. Small world kind of thing. I worked with his father at Samsonite many years ago. Jerry would be so proud of you. Congratulations. Colonel Harrell also mentioned General MacArthur. How many here know that General MacArthur was married to a Murfreesboro girl, Jean Marie Faircloth? So it traces right back to our community. Thank you again.
Attention. Freeze in. On.
Now the Murfreesboro Fire and Rescue Department will ring the bell in memory of the lost lives. Afterwards, the Smyrna Police Department and the Sheriff's Rifle Team will fire the 21-gun salute. Now Rolling Thunder will present taps.
Order. On. Hooray. Rest.
Thank you for coming out this morning. Before you leave, just take a moment to tour the 9/11 Memorial dedicated in 2011. The beam from Tower 1 of the World Trade Center points to New York City. The three columns holding the beam represent the firefighters, police, and paramedics who gave their lives while rescuing people from the collapsing tower. The four planters represent the crew, the passengers, and the people killed when the airplanes crashed into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The four flags represent the United States, state of Tennessee, the military, and a 9/11 flag. A Boy Scout designed and planted the surrounding garden as part of his Eagle Scout project. And citizens bought bricks here to help fund the project. We thank you again, especially our veterans, for joining us today for our remembrance ceremony for 9/11. God bless America.